Hello and welcome to Spirit Sherpa, the show that helps and encourages you on your journey to unlock your magic mojo. I'm Joshua Radewan, here as always with spiritual coach, shaman extraordinaire. It's Kelle. Welcome, Kelly.
Every time.
Us.
Every time. We're like WWE, man. I feel like I should come out swinging. I had a friend years ago who used to greet me every day. Now I took the last name Sparta. Okay. When I got divorced from my ex-husband in 98, I took the last name Sparta because I did not want to go back to being the naive girl that I had been when we got married. And I did not want to keep his name. And so I picked a name that I had been using as a pen name. And, I was very deep in my warrior self at the time. Right. So this friend who was a shaman twice over, man, he would greet me every time I get on the phone with Kapla, which is, Klingon warrior greetings. I was like, oh, okay, bring it. Right. What do you got? And then he would complain that I was being too harsh with, like, you invoke the warrior at the beginning of every conversation. Maybe you ought to think twice about that. And he's like, oh, valid point. Okay. And he found that I was a much softer person when he didn't do that. But yeah, we were. How did we get on that? There was something about the warrior thing. I don't know. Anyway, so we're talking about coming back to ourselves today, regardless of how we got on that topic.
Let's get back to this conversation first in the topic.
Oh my God, I have no idea. Anyway, so we did our episode for this past week, and we were talking about stepping out of the drama, right? And, and before I forget, guys, please like, subscribe, and share, and, please rate the podcast. That helps us get seen by other people. And we appreciate you for that. Okay. Well, we were talking about the drama, stepping away from the drama that's going on in the world right now. And, the other side of that is coming back to yourself, returning to self. And so when you are returning to self, how do you do that? Right. And Josh, before we get on the call or before we got on the recording today, you and I were talking about how we were being pulled away from some of the things that were pulling us away from ourselves. So you were saying you were watching less TV in general?
I haven't watched a lot of TV in the last 5 years, to be honest with you. I stepped away from that to pursue this work more diligently. For better or worse, though, I have learned to integrate. Winter time seems to be the time. Like I can put myself into rest, watch a few stories, and that's it. For the most part, it was one of the ways I decided to disconnect from the collective. Not saying that I'm not about unity, but to understand the self better, I don't need a whole bunch of my external reality showing it to me that, like program, telling a vision. I don't need that. For me, there is absolutely gifts that come through in that way. And at the same time, it limits what I am pulling from other places, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So for me, the TV is, I was a Gen X kid raised on television. So for me, the TV has been a part of my life for a long time. And I have a tendency when I'm working too hard to use the TV as I'll let the TV watch me thing, just sort of background noise while I play my game. But what I have found over the years is that my capacity to hold violent shows has dramatically dropped. Like I used to love CSI and NCIS and, Law and Order and all of these things. And now I'm just like, oh, I can't do the blood and guts and gore. I can't do the violence. I can't do the angst and the worried and all the things, right? I just can't. And so I've been finding myself very frustrated with what's coming through my platforms. And I'm actually considering shutting down my platforms because it's been challenging to be with some of the stuff that they're offering me. And so I've actually found myself on Netflix watching a lot of Korean dramas because one, they have subtitles, not dubbing. And so it forces me to not double screen. So I have to stay present to the story. And for two, they are much lower violence and much, and when there is violence, there's like not a big visual of it. It's not like this blood, gore, guts thing where you're seeing things turn over, cars turn over 15 times or whatever, right? And where you're watching blood spew everywhere, which I don't understand why we've gotten there. But now I am realizing that, for the longest time, I couldn't understand how the Romans would really love to watch the Christians get mauled by lions. I was like, why would you want to watch that? Why? And now I'm realizing that's exactly what TV is right now. It's everybody watching everybody get mauled. And I'm like, why? And so, we know it's not real, but does it matter to our brains? It does not matter to our brains, right? Our brains don't
For
know the
me,
difference.
when I do feel like watching TV, I'll Netflix. Like when I go stay with my cousin, like I'll be there during the day and I just look at the titles. I'm like, yuck, right? Like all of the suggested titles, even like for kids shows, I was just like, just yuck, and there's something I just really don't like about it. It just feels really energetically off to me at this point. And that's one of the reasons if I walk into a room and the news is on, I walk right back out. I'm like, not, like, unless it's the very end where they're, like, here's a terrible story. Here's a terrible story. I got one more terrible story. And here's a puppy to make you think that all isn't shit,
Right.
and I'll stay for the puppy, and because it's just not my reality. Right. And, but, like, I do hear what you're saying about letting the TV watch me. Like I'll scroll videos, but I'm in control for the most part of the algorithm, right? And I'm just like, cats, dogs, make me smile, dopamine, great.
Yeah.
This is what I need because I need to disconnect from all of the other stuff that we do all day long sometimes.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well, yeah, every minute of every day. Yeah. No, I feel you. I was actually having that conversation. So I had a client in town last week. She came in for a private retreat. And, we were talking about this factor too, which is that, when you get deep into this work, it's a lot of work, right? It can be a lot. I mean, the results are absolutely worth doing the work, but it can be a lot. And so you got to have fun, right? You got to have fun while you're doing it. And you can't take it too seriously. You can't take yourself too seriously because, by God, you take yourself too seriously in some of this shit and you will never get through it, right? You just got to be able to stand back and go, oh, yeah, look at me. I am really attached to that crap, aren't I?
It's a balance between being stubborn and hysterically non-critical of yourself.
Yes. Yes. So, but all of these things are things that we are talking about returning to the self. And I know it seems like it's all over the place, but it's not. All of this stuff is related, right? So you've got to be conscious of what you let into your reality. So, curate the TV shows that you watch, curate the social media that you absorb, and one of the things that I noticed is I had been really flat out trying to get everything done prior to my client arriving. And I had gotten myself to the point where I was listening to videos at 2 times speed and I was just like, la, 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 la. And I realized that when she left and I came back to my work, I was listening to things at 1x and I was happy to be at 1x. And I'm like, oh, look at that. That is progress, right? Because I'm no longer feeling like I have to rush through everything I'm listening to. So, because I really spent very little time on my phone at all while she was here, right? I would jump on the computer, get a few emails answered, whatever, because, I had to keep my business going. But mostly I was just present with her or just being and decompressing from the day and being still so that I could be present for her the next day, right? And so that process made me aware of how intensely rushed my life had become. And I'm like, okay, let's not do this again. Let's just the world is not going to end if this thing does not get done until tomorrow, right? So, how am I feeling? Let's be more rational, let's be more reasonable, let's be more self-care taking and, that sort of thing. And it's very interesting because I'm also working with a marketing company right now to put out a business version of the Welcome to the Woo program for business owners. And it's a lot of work. I mean, launching a whole new product is a massive amount of work, right? And the 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 work that they've given me is they said it would take 6 to 10 hours a week. It's really much more than that. And so, there's been a lot of trying to keep up with that, and that's been a lot too. Um, and at the same time, it's also got a mindset module in it that's like, oh, we want you to do these different mindset things every day. And I'm like, yeah, I know these, right? These are not news. But I did do one of the exercises because I haven't done a vision board in quite some time. And this is another way to come back to yourself, by the way, is to do a vision board, to sit down and think about what it is that you want your life to look like and then create a vision board. Now, I did a vision movie because I was in Canva and I was like, oh, that sounds good. I'll watch a movie and I'll create a little inspirational song in the background, have that in there, and that'll be great. And so, now I just need to get myself to watch it every day. But, I've watched it a few times, but in the process of putting the whole thing together, I was like, my house is starting to look more and more like a retreat center. Everything I add in is looking more and more like a retreat center. It's looking to be, yeah, so the vision that I'm holding is much more like a retreat center, which has never been my goal because retreat centers generally are financially not great. But in the model I'm looking at with, personal retreats and private retreats and group retreats and all of that, then, it makes a little more sense to have it be that. And I like having control of the environment when I do those types of things so that I can keep people from wandering through the space and things like that when we're doing ritual. But, this is what evolves, right? What emerges from your practices is when you sit down and you put everything together in one place that you want, you start to look at it and go, wait, that's not what I expected. That's not what I thought was what I was thinking about. But when you put it all together, that's what it looks like, right? And so it's some sort of hybrid home retreat space sort of thing, right? That's interesting. And every time you do something, you learn something about yourself too. Every time you start to engage with something that you think you want, you learn something about that. And so I learned that doing a private retreat here in Panama is tiring. And actually, I think for me, and Jeff and I had this debrief at the end because I haven't done one here before. I've done one in Richmond, but I haven't done one here. But for me, it was more tiring to do the private retreat. And for Jeff, it was more tiring to do the group retreat because Jeff is being a chef for the group. And, he's also participating in rituals for the group and things like that. And he was very not interacted in a lot of ways, with the exception of a few meals here and there for one additional person, right? As opposed to, 8 additional people, right? Big difference. And so, doing that process and learning those pieces is important to learn how to evaluate. Do I want to do it this way again? Do I want to do it differently? How many of these can I do excuse me. How many of these things can I do in a reasonable period? That sort of thing, right? And so when you're going through the process of coming back to yourself, you're going to learn things about yourself, right? So first thing, and I realize that we've been kind of a little all over the place, so I want to bring this down to more specifics. So get away from your screens as much as you can, right? If you must screen, do one screen at a time, right? Second, bring yourself into presence because it is so easy. Like, if I'm on the phone with Kathy and I talk twice a week right now. So if I'm on the phone with her, I do not want to be on my phone playing games. I don't want to be distracting my eyes. I want to be present to what she says. So that's the other piece, is you want to stay present. It is so easy to there's a part of your prefrontal cortex that's right in the front of your forehead. And when you are distracted by flipping, doom scrolling or, checking out of conversations, then you are not fully present in that prefrontal cortex. And that presence is the piece that allows you to truly connect in with another person. And being connected is where we are at our happiest. And I can hear you introverts out there. I know you don't want to be interactive, but that's not the same thing as connected, right? So to feel like you are part of a community, like you are held, like you belong, like somebody would give a shit if you died tomorrow, right? That sort of thing. And, even if you're not interactive, the people who love you the most, if you're an introvert, are the ones who let you run away, right? I mean, Jeff's inherently an introvert and he runs away to the bedroom like a lot. He's just like, I'm going to go hide. I'm like, okay, have fun, enjoy. I don't have to chase him into the bedroom. He can be gone for hours at a time and not be interactive at all. And he is just happy as a pig in shit, right? So it's being understood by the people around you. And to do that, you have to be able to connect to them, right? You have to let them know who you are. You have to let them in. You have to be present to them. You have to be in your body, right? If you're not in your body, you're not here. You're not present, right? So, yes, meditation helps, but presence
Get out
practice.
of my head.
Sorry, I'm in everybody's head right now. Meditation helps, but I mean that clears your mind, but it doesn't bring you into presence. It's presence is about being interactive with the outside world, even if that's just being present with a plant, right? You just or a pet, right? Like this morning, I make up little songs for my dog in the mornings. I made up a song to Here Comes the Sun and to All My Lovin' for my dog this morning, because we have our little morning ritual of he's like so happy to see me and I'm asking him how his evening was and did he sleep well, and we do the same little ritual every day, but it's our time to be fully present to each other. And so that sort of thing is a way to keep myself fully present as I'm making up the song and I'm changing the words as I sing to him, and to have it be all about him. And it exercises a little creativity for me, and it gives him a little bit more interaction than just the pets that he's getting at the same time. So, all of these things are ways to stay present, right? And that I'm also doing some artwork. That's another way to bring yourself back to yourself, is to do some art that does not require headspace thinking, right? It's just you're with the canvas or you're with the piece of art that you're doing. You're not having to think about it too much, and you're just able to create from a pure space, right? So we stop doing the things that distract us and we start doing the things, or we do more of the things that keep us engaged in the physical reality. So, the other thing I'm doing, because I realized that I went through menopause a few years back and I lost my brain because of hormone changes. And I realized that I had stopped even trying to remember things because I wasn't remembering them no matter how hard I tried. And so when I got to the other side of the hormones, I never re-engaged. And so the other thing I'm doing is quizzing myself. I'm like, oh, look, I can remember this now. Okay, what did that person say a minute ago? What did they say? What was the name of that person they just mentioned? And I'm starting to force myself to pay attention again, which requires an active process. It's exhausting to do, but I'm retraining my brain so that my brain will then function better than it has for a while. And so, all of these things are things that go into the mix, right? So it's about staying fully present. It's about making an effort to notice. It's about noticing the other person's energy field who's in front of you and checking to see how they're feeling, right? Like, I had a friend come over while my client was here. She was doing readings for everybody that, not everybody, I invited over friends so that she could do cold readings for people she didn't know, right? And one of my friends was outside the door. And I opened the door. I'm like, oh my God, you're having a day, aren't you? She was like, yeah, okay. And I noticed just a glimpse out the window. I'm like, oh, damn, right? But that's because I was paying attention, right? I was fully locked in. And so when you are fully locked in, you pick up on stuff like that. When you're not, you don't. And consequently, people feel less cared for. They feel less noticed. They feel, not not present in your life, even though they're physically there, right? You're not there for them, right?
I have a tendency to dissociate from conversations very quickly. Like if I'm like done with it, I will just go like I like Jeff in a lot of ways, right? Like I hit that point where I'm done, and then I'm all up to meditate for 3 hours, and I think it's a way that I hide from humanity too. But I do work there, but I've known. I mean, recently, like when I started going back to the gym after walkabout, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. But that's one of the ways I stay present. You're like, I don't listen to headphones in there. I'm just with the muscle. I'm not like doing all of the ethereal shit that I think I have to be doing nonstop because of this work. I'm just like, this is what the work leads to. But I'm always like, what piece is next? Oh, great deities of above.
You're addicted to the work of this, man.
I love it. But they're like, you have to live. And like just be up here all the time. I was like, but I'm just here. This is just a meat suit. Why can't I? It's love me. They're like, we do, but you have to get out there. Then mix it up a little bit more.
Well, then if you were gonna live up there, you wouldn't have incarnated, right?
So that's a conversation for a whole other day.
I don't know. I think it might be a conversation for today.
Well, I got drug. I'm pretty sure I got drug kicking, screaming to this existence as well as to this pet.
No. No.
Like we're working on birth stories, and I had to talk to my mom about that. And she's like, yeah, you came out and then went back in. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I knew the soul contract for 40 years. Take me back to the Supreme Leader.
Take me back to Paradise City where the grass is
but no,
green and the girls are pretty. Yeah, there you go.
The presence thing is so true. Like when that's why I love group sessions, but I really, really excel in one-to-one work myself because I can really, take in all the nuances of each person and I'm just, right there with them. And that's really a beautiful presence practice for me. And I think it's so funny you were talking about listening to everything on two times speed because I do that with everything. And then I meet the person in person. I'm like, why don't you talk like a chipmunk? Just yeah, because like you listen to it, some of it 2.5 speed, 3, depending upon the person. And
yeah,
it's like
some people talk really slow.
Yeah, but no, I think I've never really looked at the presence as one of the ways that we return to self. I guess I never really thought about it or looked at it from this specific perspective. I think it's great what you're onto. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is the thing. I'm going to give you guys a challenge. If you're listening to this at more than 1x speed, damn it. No, what I'm going to say is, you don't have to rush to get everywhere. This is the thing that you have to recognize about multiple, about 1x, 1.5x, 2x, or about 1.5, 2x, 3x speed. You're rushing to get to the end. You're not being present with what's being delivered. And, if it's something that you don't really care about and you have to listen to mark it off as being done, when I was a real estate agent, we used to have to do continuing education courses and I used to teach continuing ed and they wouldn't let me get credits for the teaching that I did. So, I would put those on 3x speed because I wasn't learning anything new because I was already teaching it, right? That sort of thing, fine. But unless you are, if you're listening to something that you actually want to learn from, you should be listening to it at 1x speed, because I guarantee you are not taking everything in. And at multiple times speed, you are also not going to notice that you've checked out fast enough. So when you go, oh, I've checked out, you'll back up a little bit, but you're not going to back up enough. You're not going to back up to the thing that you actually checked out from, the thing that you needed to know that you checked out from, right? So, oh, he's shaking his head.
I feel totally called out because I took a finally I took a brief integration and didn't do much work. I mean, like it's the first time in like 4 years of doing this work that I'm like, I'm just gonna not. And then I got back in and I was like, oh my God, I'm so far behind. So I was like going through lessons. And yesterday was the one on the reptilian brain and trauma
Mm.
responses. And I 2X'd it and I was thinking, I'm gonna test that right now. What did I retain from there? Nothing. Fucking great. I'm back to 1X speed.
Uh, Yeah, especially for stuff like this,
Yeah.
because not only are you, when you listen to the podcast or any of the lessons in the programs, not only are you getting the information, and the information can be pretty esoteric at times. And so, you got to really allow it to land. But I'm also often doing downloads. And so when you're trying to download at 2 or 3x speed, ouch, right? Either ouch or no, you're not getting the download, right? One or the other. And so, this is your encouragement to slow down. The nervous system does not operate in 2 and 3x speed. And it just stresses out when it tries to. Your nervous system is designed for being present and slow, not running. When you're operating at like 50 different things at once and, multiple speed times listening and everything like that, your nervous system says there's an emergency, and it operates that way. It dumps adrenaline and cortisol into your system, and it encourages you to continue at that pace because there's an emergency, because you are behaving as though there's an emergency. And then ultimately it will exhaust your adrenals, and your cortisol levels will go through the roof, and you'll gain weight like no tomorrow, and you will have sleep problems, and you'll be stressed as fuck, right? There's all these things that happen because we force ourselves into a faster pace of life. So this is your reminder to come back to normal speed. And normal speed is about half of what you think the normal speed is. Okay. When you look at yourself and you say, this is my stressed out speed, I'm listening to everything at multiple times, I'm trying to get 40 things done at once, whatever, that's your normal speed. And then you go, okay, I need to come back to what my body's normal speed is. That'll be about half of what you think it is. Well, that is not even close to where it actually is. Okay. That's about where we were 20 years ago when we operated without screens. And that was still stressed out speed back then. So, you got to take it down to half of that again. And then you're going to get to the point where you realize, if you leave it there long enough, you're going to be like, nope, I'm still stressed out. And then you're going to have to cut it back even more, right? Think of our ancestors. What did they do in a day? They would go hunting, they would go gathering, they would make a fire, they would sit around the fire, they would listen to the stories from the elders, they would have food, make food, have food, but there was no rush, unless like they were tanning hides or something and they needed to pull them in from the rain. Then there'd be like 15 minutes of flurried thing of trying to get the things out of the rain, and that would be it, right? And then they'd be back to normal speed again, right? This is what we're leaning towards as we try to come back to self, right? Take time where there's no input. Okay. Our brains are not meant for conscious or continuous. That's the word I'm looking for. Our brains are not meant for continuous input. They are meant for downtime and empty space and time in nature and time to just sit and be and not have to do, right? This constant doing state is not serving us. So come back to quiet, come back to stillness, come back to beingness, and allow yourself to relax. Because this is how we come to a state of peace. And if you remember from the last episode, we were talking about bring yourself into peace so that you can be the change you want to see in the world. Thank you, Gandhi, right? So this is how you get there, is by slowing down. And if your anxiety is off the charts, slowing down will absolutely help. The Welcome to the Woo program will help even more. But if you don't have the time, bandwidth, or money for the Welcome to the Woo program, then, slow down. Slow down. That will help a lot. Okay. Josh, do you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you said it all there. I think
Okay.
what you said really shores it up.
All right. So then I'm going to tell you guys, please like, subscribe, and share. And remember, what you focus on is what you create. Or what you focus on is what expands. I can do this. What you focus on is what expands. What you intend is what you create. So choose wisely. Speaking of trying to get to the end faster. Have a good one.